Hello ladies and gentlemen, lalong-lalo na sa aming mga kabalanse. This is Group 3 of Grade 12 ABM Disney. So, here we are going to discuss about accrued income and accrued expense. Our objective for this lesson that we need to learn at the end of the topic are know what are accrued income and accrued expense, learn to differentiate the accrued income and accrued expense and to know their similarities, and lastly, to learn how we can apply these two in our lives. What does it mean when something is accrued? It is to accumulate over time. Kapag sinabing accrue, ito ay naiipon sa paglipas ng panahon. Madalas na gamitin ang salitang accrued sa mga interes, income, or expenses na natanggap at naipon ng isang individual o negosyo. At kapag sinabing accrues over time, halimbawa nito ay ang interes sa savings account na kung saan ang naipon na kabuwang halaga sa isang account ay lumalago dahil sa paglipas ng panahon. And now, let's talk about accrued income. What is accrued income?
Accrued income is earnings from investment that have not yet been received by the investing entity and to which the investing entity is entitled. This concept is used under the accrual basis of accounting, where income can be earned even when the related cash has not yet been received. Under the accrual basis, the investing entity should accrue its best estimate of the income in the accounting period in which it earns the income. It may not be necessary to generate this accrual if the amount is immaterial, since the resulting accrual would have no demonstrable impact on the financial statement.
Ang accrued income ay ang naipong pera na kinita mula sa mga investments, ngunit ito ay hindi pa natatanggap or nahawakan. So basically, the entity is entitled to the money but hindi pa ito nababayaran. Itong konseptong ito ay ginagamit under accrual basis ng accounting na kung saan ang income ay maaaring maipon kahit na ang pera ay hindi pa natatanggap o nakukuha or nahawakan ng isang person or organisasyon. So basically, kung iniisip ng isang investing entity na kikita ito in a certain period, dapat nitong itala ang halagang iyon bilang income sa mga financial statement for that period, kahit na hindi pa nito natatanggap ang pera or cash. Minsan ay hindi kailangan ng isang individual or organisasyon na i-generate ang accrual na ito kung ito naman ay hindi mahalaga o hindi magkakaroon ng kapansin-pansing epekto sa mga gagawing financial statements ng isang kumpanya.
Another definition for accrued income. In accrual accounting, money received for products or services but not yet earned is referred to as deferred income. It is recorded as a liability up until delivery is made, at which point it is transformed into revenue in accordance with the revenue recognition principle. So in accrual accounting, mayroong tinatawag na accrued income or deferred income na kung saan ang pera ay natanggap mula sa mga produkto or serbisyo ngunit hindi pa kinikita. Halimbawa nito ay kapag naka-receive ka ng bayad for a project that hasn't been completed yet, the money would be considered as deferred income. Itong accrued income ay nire-record as liability sa balance sheet until delivery is made. And once the delivery is made, ito ay nagiging revenue at ire-report sa income statement in accordance with the revenue recognition principle. Karamihan sa mga kumpanya ay gumagamit ng accrual accounting. Ito ay isang alternatibong paraan ng cash accounting at kinakailangan para sa mga kumpanyang nagbebenta ng mga produkto o nagbibigay ng mga serbisyo sa mga customer ng pautang. Sa ilalim ng US General Accepted Accounting Principles or GAAP, ang accrual accounting ay batay sa Revenue Recognition Principle. Ang prinsipyong ito ay naglalayong itugma ang mga kita sa panahon kung saan sila kinita, kaysa sa panahon kung saan natanggap ang kinita. Sa madaling salita, kapag ang pera ay hindi pa natatanggap, hindi ito nangangahulugan na hindi ito kita. Ang naipon na kita ay kadalasang ginagamit sa industriya ng serbisyo o sa mga kaso kung saan ang mga customer ay sinisingil ng oras-oras na rate para sa trabahong natapos na, but will be billed in a future accounting period. Accrued income is listed in the assets section of the balance sheet because it represents a future benefit to the company in the form of a future cash payout. Ang halimbawa ng accrued income o mga kita na hindi pa natatanggap, ang kita na kinikita ng isang manggagawa ay karaniwang naipon over a period of time. Halimbawa, maraming empleyado ang pinapasweldo ng kanilang kumpanya kada 2 linggo. Hindi sila binabayaran sa pagtatapos ng bawat araw ng trabaho. Ngunit pagkatapos ng 2 linggo, ang mga empleyado ay binabayaran at ang naipon na halaga ay babalik sa zero.
Another example of accrued income. Assume that Company A picks up trash for local communities and bills its customers for 15,000 pesos at the end of every 6-month cycle. Kahit na ang Company A ay hindi naka-receive ng payment for 6 months, the company still records a 2,500 pesos debit to accrued income at magre-record din ito ng 2,500 credit to revenue each month. The bill has not been sent out, but the work has been performed, and therefore, expenses have already been incurred and the revenue earned. When cash is received for the service at the end of 6 months, the company will make 15,000 pesos credit in the amount of full payment to accrued income, and 15,000 pesos debit is made to cash. The balance in accrued income returns to zero for that customer. Now let's talk about accrued expense. What is accrued expense? When a company pays for goods or services at the end of an accounting period, even though the goods or services were received in a previous period, this can create an accrued expense. The company hasn't paid for the expense yet, but they have already incurred the cost. This type of situation is reported as a liability on the balance sheet because it represents a future obligation to pay that will need to be met at some point in the future. Ang accrued expense ay ang mga na-consume na nating goods or services na hindi pa nababayaran at maaaring bayaran next year. Sa mga kumpanya, nakadepende sa ginagamit nila kung ito ba ay babayaran by calendar period. Meron ding nag-a-adjust by quarter at iba pa. Kaya naman, itong accrued expense ay nire-record sa balance sheet as liability dahil it represents as future obligation na kung saan ay kinakailangang mabayaran pagdating ng panahon. Some accrued expenses are secured, meaning the party owed is entitled to be paid out of the assets of the company if not otherwise paid. Others are unsecured, meaning the party owed has no claim to the company's assets. With unsecured assets, terms of payments are usually aggressive, for example, within 30 days. It just means na kapag ang accrued expense ay secured, ang inutang na parte ay dapat nabayaran mula sa mga ari-arian o assets ng kumpanya kung hindi pa nabayaran ng buo. At kung ito naman ay unsecured, walang karapatan ng isang entity sa assets ng kumpanya.
Example of accrued expense. Miss Cly consumes 3,000 pesos utility in March. The expense for the utility consumed of Miss Cly remains unpaid on the balance day, March 28. Miss Cly then receives its bill for the utility consumed on April 5 and makes the payment on April 25. On the balance day, The accrued expense of utility is treated as current liability or utility payable owed to the utility of Ms. Cly, and the expense or utility expense incurred by Ms. Cly in March. In the reporting period of April, Ms. Cly should record its cash payment on April 25 for its utility bill. This entry includes a counter account for the utility payable from the previous period in the cash account.
Another examples of accrued expense.
Examples of expense that are commonly accrued include the following items: interest on loans, for which no lender invoice has yet been received; goods received and consumers sold, for which no supplier invoice has yet been received; service received, for which no supplier invoice has yet been received; tax incurred, for which no invoice from a government entity has yet been received; wages incurred, for which payment to employees has not yet been made.
After learning about the definitions of accrued income and accrued expense, let's now know what are the differences and similarities of these two. Accrued income is income earned but not yet received and not due by an accounting period's end. Tulad ng tinalakay kanina, ang accrued income ay ang pera na pagmamayari mo na pero hindi mo pa natatanggap. Kahit na ang pera ay hindi mo pa natatanggap, ito ay kinakailangang naka-record pa rin. Accrued expense is an expense incurred or liabilities, amounts that have been incurred but not have been paid by an accounting period's end. Ang accrued expense naman ay ang pag-consume ng goods or services na kinakailangan bayaran at the end of accounting period. Ito ay kinikilala din bilang isang liabilities. These two are both accrued, na kung saan ang accrued ay receive or accumulate in regular or increasing amounts over time. Isa pang similarities nito ay they are both used in accounting, na kung saan ay parehas mong mababasa o maririnig ang mga term na accrued expense at accrued income sa subject na accounting dahil ito ay maaaring gamitin bilang account titles. After discussing about the differences and similarities of accrued income and accrued expense, let's now discuss how we can apply these two in real-life situations. Let's start with accrued income, where the money is earned pero hindi mo pa ito nare-receive o nahawakan. Assuming na you have a small business, tapos ang ginawa mo ay umutang ka kay Bombay, and then si Bombay binigyan niya yung halaga na gusto mong utangin sa kanya by this December. Pero gusto mo na ito bayaran ng full. So, ang gagawin mo ay bibigyan mo si Bombay na promissory note at siya naman ay bibigyan kanya ng interest o tubo. And by this situation, ito ay maaaring tawagin na accrued income dahil si Bombay ay kumita pero hindi niya pa ito mahawakan dahil next year pa niya itong makukuha ang perang kanyang kikitain. Next one naman is accrued expense. Accrued expense naman ay yung mga expenses na atin nang na-consume pero hindi pa ito nababayaran. Assuming that from the start of December ay nag-consume ka ng water utilities ninyo and then you will receive your bill from your water consumption on that month. Itong bill na to ay kinakailangan mabayaran by January. So, bale, itong situation na to ay isang accrued expense dahil inyong na-consume na yung water nang hindi pa ito nababayaran. And that is accrued income and accrued expense.